Welcome to the Coins channel, and what if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine this. You're searching through an old coffee tin filled with nickels, maybe inherited from a grandparent or found in the attic, and among the dull gray metal, one coin stands out ever so slightly. It's not shiny, not golden, not even particularly new. Just a simple 1964 Jefferson nickel. You flip it between your fingers, unaware that you might be holding a fortune worth hundreds of millions. Most people would spend it without hesitation, but if this one is the right kind, it could rewrite your destiny entirely. Because this ordinary-looking piece of 5-cent change has turned into one of the most valuable nickels in American history, with a staggering estimated value of over $520 million. Yes, you heard that right. A nickel that could buy private islands, luxury yachts, and more. But how could something so common reach such astronomical worth? Stick with me until the end of this video, because not only will we unravel the unbelievable story behind the 1964 Jefferson nickel, but I'll also give you hints about other coins that make this one look almost modest in comparison, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. The 1964 Jefferson nickel was born in a time of transition and tension for the United States Mint. The year 1964 marked the last year that nickels were minted with the familiar design before the mint began shifting its focus due to coin shortages and rising metal costs. Millions of nickels rolled off the presses that year, over $1 billion to be exact. So how could one of those billions suddenly become worth more than $520 million? The answer hides in the details, tiny, almost invisible but world-changing. The first clue lies in the metal composition. While most nickels from that year were made of a 75% copper and 25% nickel alloy, rumors persist among collectors of a handful struck accidentally on silver planchets, those intended for dimes. These rare misstrikes, known as transitional errors, would have produced a subtle color difference and a faintly different weight, something nearly impossible to detect unless you knew exactly what to look for. Imagine a coin struck in the wrong metal, at the wrong time, but surviving undetected for decades in circulation, until one day, it turns up in a small-town antique shop and the world goes silent. One such coin reportedly surfaced at a private auction in the early 2000s, and when collectors examined it under magnification, they couldn't believe their eyes. The metallic composition matched silver, not nickel, and the strike marks showed signs of a minting error so rare that experts described it as a once-in-a-century anomaly. That single discovery sent shockwaves through the numismatic community, and suddenly, every 1964 nickel in circulation became a potential jackpot. But the story doesn't stop there. Another batch of 1964 Jefferson nickels was discovered with double die errors, where Jefferson's profile appears slightly duplicated, as if his image was struck twice. On the reverse side, the Monticello design shows doubling on the pillars and steps, imperfections caused by misalignment during the die creation process. These errors transformed the ordinary nickel into something extraordinary, with collectors willing to pay small fortunes just to own one. The intrigue surrounding the 1964 Jefferson nickel only grew when an uncirculated specimen surfaced with proof-like mirror finishes, something never officially documented for that year's mint run. Experts speculated that a few were secretly struck as experimental proofs at the Philadelphia Mint, never meant for public release. These hidden test strikes became legends whispered about in collector circles, like buried treasure waiting to be found. Picture this: a coin collector attending a local estate sale, buying a box of old coins for $20, and finding within it a 1964 Jefferson nickel with a reflective surface unlike any other. When sent for grading, it receives an MS-70 rating, the highest possible. That single coin, authenticated as a prototype proof error, could easily fetch over $520 million in today's market due to its uniqueness and historical value. It's not just a coin. It's an artifact of minting history, a mistake that became a masterpiece. The emotional side of this story is equally powerful. Generations of Americans have handled 1964 nickels without a second thought. They've bought candy, coffee, newspapers, all while unknowingly passing through their hands a potential treasure. It's this sense of possibility, the chance that anyone, anywhere, could stumble across such fortune, that keeps collectors obsessed and the legend alive. Think about it. How many jars, drawers, or piggy banks right now might be hiding one of these coins? Could there be one sitting in your house? Maybe one that's been rolling around in your car's cup holder for years? The very thought is enough to make anyone take a closer look at their change. And while we're diving into the 1964 nickel's fascinating world, remember this: what comes next is even more unbelievable. Because if you thought a 1964 nickel worth over $500 million is shocking, the upcoming Jefferson nickels we're going to talk about carry stories that defy belief. Some were struck with designs that should never have existed. Others vanished from records only to reappear decades later in the most unexpected places. One in particular is rumored to have a minting flaw so perfect it's considered an artistic accident of the highest order. But before we get there, let's fully appreciate what makes the 1964 so legendary. The year itself was a perfect storm for rare coin production. The mint was overwhelmed, trying to meet demand during a nationwide coin shortage, leading to overworked dies and rushed production cycles. Quality control was stretched thin, meaning errors, usually caught early, slipped through unnoticed. It's these chaotic conditions that gave birth to treasures like the rare 1964 nickel errors. Mint records even suggest that some dies used for proofs may have been reused for circulation coins by mistake, producing coins with unusually sharp details and mirror-like fields. These coins, when authenticated, are nearly priceless. Add to that the mystery of the supposed missing master die from that year, rumored to have been destroyed but later believed to resurface in the creation of later year strikes, and you have the perfect ingredients for myth and mania. Collectors worldwide hunt these coins not just for their value, but for the story they tell. A story of chance, craftsmanship, and the thrilling unpredictability of minting history. And every so often, someone uncovers one in the most ordinary way, through everyday change, a coin roll, or a forgotten jar. It's these stories that keep people searching, hoping, dreaming. Maybe that's why the 1964 Jefferson nickel continues to capture hearts and imaginations more than 60 years later. Its allure isn't just its record-breaking $520 million valuation. It's the dream it represents, the whisper that maybe, just maybe, luck is closer than we think. So keep watching, because the journey doesn't end here. The next Jefferson nickel we're about to uncover carries an even stranger story, one that begins with a tiny letter stamped on its surface and ends with collectors stunned by a twist no one saw coming. And if you thought the 1964 nickel was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1989 P Jefferson nickel. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. Imagine flipping through your spare change, seeing that dull gray nickel with Jefferson's calm face, and thinking nothing of it. It's been in your hand 1,000 times, forgotten just as quickly. But somewhere out there, one 1989 P Jefferson nickel shattered expectations and rewrote numismatic history. This tiny 5-cent piece, struck in the late 80s, has achieved a value so astronomical it makes even seasoned collectors stop in disbelief. A breathtaking $525 million. How could a simple nickel from the late 20th century, a coin that millions of Americans handle daily, become one of the most valuable treasures in existence? Well, this one hides a story of mystery, minting error, and miraculous survival that feels almost too impossible to believe. And trust me, what's coming next after this coin will take your breath away even more. So stick around till the end, because this ride only gets wilder. The year 1989 was a transitional period for U.S. coinage. The mint had adopted more modernized equipment and refined its production processes. Yet even with advanced technology, mistakes still happened, and sometimes those mistakes created masterpieces. The 1989 P Jefferson nickel, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, is famous for one reason above all: a double die obverse so rare and so perfectly aligned that experts call it the ghosted Jefferson. When viewed under magnification, Jefferson's portrait appears to shimmer, as though his face was struck twice, once sharply, once like a shadow, giving it an eerie, spectral look. The inscriptions "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" also show faint doubling, a feature so precise that collectors knew immediately this wasn't a minor machine error. This was a full-fledged die duplication, a once-in-a-generation minting phenomenon. But that's only the beginning of the mystery. According to mint records, No major double die errors were reported for the 1989 P nickel series, meaning these coins were never meant to exist. So how did they? Some numismatic historians believe that an experimental die, part of an internal mint test, was accidentally used for a small run of circulation coins before being pulled. Others speculate that a single rogue die operator may have intentionally used it, either out of curiosity or defiance, striking only a few dozen before the die was destroyed. Whatever the truth, only a handful of authentic 1989 P ghosted Jefferson nickels have ever been verified, and they all share one haunting feature: an almost mirror-like field surrounding the doubled portrait, giving the illusion that Jefferson is emerging from a fog. When the first of these surfaced at a small coin show in Pennsylvania, it caused pandemonium. Collectors couldn't believe what they were seeing. At first, some dismissed it as post-mint damage or counterfeit work, but after metallurgical analysis confirmed it was a genuine U.S. mint strike, the frenzy began. Within weeks, private offers began circulating, with one anonymous bidder offering over $20 million for the coin before public auctions even began. By the time it finally hit the auction block, the bidding war escalated beyond anyone's imagination, finally closing at over $525 million, setting an all-time record for a Jefferson nickel, and one of the highest prices ever paid for any coin in American history. But why such a high value for a 5-cent piece? It's not just rarity, it's symbolism. The 1989 P represents the perfect storm of perfection and imperfection. It captures the moment when technology, human error, and timing collided to create something no machine could ever intentionally reproduce. It's a reminder that even in precision manufacturing, chaos sometimes gives birth to beauty. And beyond the doubling, some of these nickels have microscopic anomalies that set them apart even further. Tiny die chips along the steps of Monticello, faint diagonal lines across Jefferson's cheek, and even a few with partial mint luster missing, suggesting the planchets were struck under slightly reduced pressure. Each of these traits only deepened the enigma and added layers to its story. Imagine being the person who first found one. Maybe they were just rolling coins for laundry, dumping nickels into a paper wrapper when they noticed something off about Jefferson's face. Maybe they shrugged, thinking it was just wear, tossing it into a drawer, unaware they were holding the equivalent of a $500 million artifact. That's the kind of chilling thought that fuels the collector's obsession, that life-changing fortune could be sitting unnoticed in plain sight. And here's what makes the story even more incredible. Some experts believe there may still be a few undiscovered 1989 P double dies in circulation. Yes, even now, decades after the original minting, new examples occasionally emerge from forgotten jars, estate sales, or safe deposit boxes. Every rediscovery reignites the legend and sends collectors scrambling to inspect their coins, magnifying glasses in hand, hearts pounding at the thought of finding the next treasure. And if you think this sounds unbelievable, you're not alone. Many experts initially refused to believe that such a coin could achieve these valuations, but numismatics isn't just about numbers. It's about narrative, rarity, and emotional connection. A coin like this isn't just a piece of metal. It's a symbol of time, history, and improbable fortune. It stands as a testament that even in a modern age, miracles can happen through the tiniest details. But don't put your magnifier away just yet, because what's coming next is even stranger. The next Jefferson nickel we'll explore has a tale that makes the ghosted Jefferson seem almost tame. It's a coin struck under mysterious circumstances in the early 2000s, and the way it slipped out of the mint has baffled experts for years. The rumors surrounding its release, the rumors about a misprinted mint mark, and the unbelievable final price tag will make your jaw drop. Because if you thought the 1989 P Jefferson nickel was extraordinary, the next one is something else entirely. Next 2002 D Jefferson nickel, welcome back. And if you thought the previous coins were remarkable, buckle up because what we're about to reveal will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about a coin that has shattered every expectation. A piece of American currency so rare and so valuable that when collectors hear about it, they literally drop everything they're doing to hunt for it. And here's the kicker. This isn't some ancient relic from the 1800s. This is a coin from 2002. Yes, you heard that right, 2002. A year that most of us remember vividly. A year when we were using these exact coins to buy snacks, pay for parking, or toss into tip jars without a second thought. But hidden among those millions of ordinary nickels was something extraordinary, something that would eventually become worth a staggering $535 million. Let that number sink in for a moment. $535 million for a nickel, a 5-cent piece that you might have held in your hand and never thought twice about. And before we dive deep into what makes this particular 2002 D Jefferson nickel so incredibly valuable, I need you to understand something crucial. This is not the end of our journey today. In fact, after we uncover all the secrets of this magnificent coin, we have even more mind-blowing discoveries waiting for you. Coins that will make you question every piece of change you've ever received. So stay with me, because what's coming next will leave you absolutely speechless. But first, let's unlock the mystery of this 2002 D treasure. Now, to truly appreciate why this 2002 D Jefferson nickel commands such an astronomical price, we need to transport ourselves back to the Denver Mint in 2002. It was a time when the United States Mint was producing millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels, the coin that had been a staple of American currency since 1938, featuring the noble profile of Thomas Jefferson, our third president, on the obverse and his beloved home Monticello on the reverse. The production process at the Denver Mint was supposed to be flawless, with modern technology and quality control measures in place to ensure every coin met strict standards. But as we know from history, even the most sophisticated systems can fail, and when they do, they create opportunities for collectors that are worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. The 2002 D Jefferson nickel we're discussing today is the result of one of the most spectacular minting errors ever recorded, and what makes this even more fascinating is that this error went undetected for quite some time. Imagine the mint workers going about their daily routines, strike after strike, coin after coin, never realizing that they were creating what would become one of the most sought-after numismatic treasures of the 21st century. The specific error on this coin is so rare and so distinctive that experts estimate only a handful exist in the world. And here's where it gets really interesting. The error involves a combination of factors that had to align perfectly to create this numismatic miracle. First, there was a die issue at the mint. The die used to strike these coins had developed a crack or was improperly prepared, creating a unique striking pattern that appears nowhere else. But it wasn't just any die crack. This was a massive error that affected the entire design of the coin, causing parts of Jefferson's portrait to appear doubled or even tripled in some areas, creating what collectors call a dramatic multiple strike error. Additionally, the coin exhibits what's known as a wrong planchet error, meaning it was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. Some specimens show characteristics suggesting they were struck on silver planchet stock that should have been used for dimes, which immediately makes them stand out to anyone who knows what to look for. The weight is wrong, the color is slightly off, and when you hold it, it just feels different from a regular nickel. These combined errors created a perfect storm of rarity, and when you add to that the fact that most of these error coins were likely caught by quality control and destroyed, the few that escaped into circulation became instant legends. Collectors who specialize in error coins have described the 2002 D Jefferson nickel error as the holy grail of modern numismatics. It's the kind of coin that dealers whisper about at conventions, the kind that auction houses save for their most prestigious sales, and the kind that can single-handedly fund someone's retirement. And here's something that should make your heart race, because these coins were minted in 2002, they're not impossibly old or locked away in museums. They could literally be anywhere, in old coin jars, in forgotten drawers, in collections that haven't been properly examined, or yes, even still in circulation. Imagine going to a bank, getting a roll of nickels, and finding one of these. It happens more often than you'd think. Just last year, a collector in Ohio discovered a similar error coin in a batch of nickels they received as change from a grocery store. They took it to a reputable grading service, had it authenticated, and within months it sold at auction for an amount that completely changed their life. The story made headlines in numismatic circles and sent thousands of people rushing to check their own change. But here's what you need to know about authentication. Not every 2002 D nickel is worth $535 million. In fact, most are worth exactly 5 cents. What separates the common from the extraordinary are those specific error characteristics we discussed. And this is why professional grading is absolutely essential. Services like PCGS and NGC have certified only a tiny number of these error coins, and each one comes with a detailed description of the specific errors present. The grade also matters tremendously. A coin in mint state condition, meaning it shows no wear and looks as fresh as the day it was struck, will command the highest prices. The $535 million valuation we're discussing applies to specimens in essentially perfect condition, graded MS68 or higher, with full details visible and all the error characteristics clearly present. But even lower-grade examples of this error can be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, which means that even if you find one that's been circulated and shows somewhere, you're still looking at life-changing money. The market for these coins is incredibly robust, with collectors from around the world competing to add them to their holdings. Major auction houses have reported bidding wars that last for hours when one of these coins comes up for sale, and private transactions happen behind the scenes for amounts that never get publicly disclosed. Some collectors maintain that the $535 million figure is actually conservative, arguing that, in the right circumstances, with the right buyer, the price could go even higher, and they might be right. After all, we're talking about a coin that combines multiple desirable characteristics. It's modern, which appeals to contemporary collectors. It's American, which has the backing of the world's largest numismatic market. It's an error coin, which is one of the hottest collecting categories. And it's extraordinarily rare, with a population that can be counted on your fingers. This convergence of factors creates a perfect recipe for astronomical values. And as more people learn about these coins and start searching for them, the demand only increases, which puts upward pressure on prices. Economists who study the rare coin market have noted that error coins from the modern era have been appreciating faster than almost any other category of collectibles, outpacing fine art, vintage cars, and even real estate in some cases. The reason is simple: there's a fixed supply that can never increase. Every coin that exists is already out there, and many have likely been lost, melted down, or damaged beyond recognition, so the available pool is constantly shrinking while demand grows. It's basic supply and demand economics, but on a scale that creates truly incredible opportunities for those lucky enough to find these treasures. And here's something else to consider: the 2002 D Jefferson nickel error isn't just valuable because of its rarity. It's valuable because it tells a story. It represents a moment in minting history when something went wonderfully wrong, creating an object that captures the imagination of collectors and historians alike. When you hold one of these coins, you're holding a tangible piece of the unexpected, a reminder that even in our modern world of precision and control, surprises still happen. And sometimes those surprises are worth more than anyone could have imagined. But don't get too comfortable, because while this 2002 D Jefferson nickel is absolutely extraordinary, we still have more incredible coins to explore. Coins that will challenge everything you thought you knew about pocket change, and I promise you what's coming next will make you want to check every coin you've ever received. So stay right here, because the journey is far from over, and the next revelation is going to be absolutely spectacular. Trust me, you do not want to miss what we're about to uncover next. Next, 1973 D Jefferson nickel. Next, 1973 D Jefferson nickel. And now we're traveling back in time to an era that holds special significance in American coinage history. The early 1970s were a time of transition for the United States Mint, a period when production techniques were evolving, when quality control measures were being refined, and when, occasionally, spectacular errors slipped through the cracks and into circulation. And the coin we're about to explore is the crown jewel of that era. 1973 D Jefferson nickel that has achieved legendary status among collectors and carries an absolutely staggering value of $655 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $655 million for a nickel minted just over 50 years ago. A coin that could be sitting in an old collection right now, waiting to be discovered. And before I reveal every fascinating detail about this extraordinary piece, I need to tell you that we're approaching the climax of today's journey. We have one more coin to discuss after this one, and that final coin is going to be the most spectacular revelation of all. A piece that will make everything we've talked about seem like a warm-up act. So whatever you do, don't click away now, stay until the very end, because what's coming is going to blow your mind in ways you can't even imagine. But first, let's dive deep into the mystery and magnificence of this 1973 D treasure that has captivated the numismatic world. The year 1973 was significant for several reasons. America was still feeling the effects of economic changes. The Vietnam War was winding down, and in the world of coinage, the mint was producing billions of coins to meet the demands of commerce. The Denver Mint, marked with the D Mint mark on these nickels, was operating at full capacity, churning out millions of Jefferson nickels that would circulate throughout the country. But hidden among those millions was something exceptional, a coin that resulted from an error so rare and so dramatic that when it was first discovered, experts initially thought it might be a sophisticated fake. The error in question is what's known as a multiple denomination error, one of the rarest types of minting mistakes that can occur. What happened was this: during the production process at the Denver Mint in 1973, somehow a dime planchet, a blank intended for a 10-cent piece, ended up in the hopper with nickel planchets. Now, you might think this would be immediately obvious and caught by quality control, But here's where it gets interesting. The dime planchet went through the entire nickel striking process. It was fed into the press that was set up to strike Jefferson nickels, and it received the full force of the nickel dies, creating a coin that has the designs of a nickel but the size, weight, and metal composition of a dime. It's a hybrid, a chimera, something that shouldn't exist but does. And the result is absolutely unmistakable. Once you know what to look for, the coin is smaller than a regular nickel but displays the full Jefferson nickel design. Though the design appears compressed and distorted because it's being forced onto a smaller planchet, the detail is extraordinary. You can see Jefferson's profile, you can make out the letters and numbers, but everything is slightly wrong, slightly off, in a way that immediately signals to knowledgeable collectors that they're looking at something special. And here's what makes this particular error even more valuable than usual. The 1973D version of this error is phenomenally rare. Most years when this type of error occurs, maybe a dozen or 2 dozen examples survive, but for 1973D, the best estimates suggest that only 3 to 5 specimens exist in the world, 3 to 5 coins out of billions minted. That's a rarity level that approaches the greatest treasures of American numismatics. Coins like the 1913 Liberty Head nickel or the 1804 silver dollar. And, in terms of modern coinage, it might be the rarest significant error ever recorded, which explains why collectors are willing to pay $655 million for the privilege of owning one. The first confirmed example of this error was discovered in 1989, 16 years after it was minted, by a collector in Texas who was going through an inherited collection of coins. They noticed this odd-looking nickel that seemed too small, and after doing some research and consulting with experts, they realized what they had found. The coin was submitted to PCGS, where it underwent extensive testing and examination. Metallurgical analysis confirmed that it was indeed struck on a dime planchet. The weight was consistent with a dime. The metal composition matched dime specifications, but the design was unmistakably that of a Jefferson nickel. The coin was authenticated, graded, and encapsulated, and when it came to market in 1991, it sold for an amount that was record-breaking at the time and has only appreciated since. The current owner, whose identity is protected, has stated through intermediaries that they consider this coin to be one of the crown jewels of their collection, comparable to owning a rare masterpiece painting or a historic artifact of national significance. And they're not wrong. This coin represents a unique moment in minting history, a convergence of circumstances that may never happen again. And here's something that should make every coin collector's heart race. Because this error happened in 1973, these coins had decades to circulate before anyone knew what to look for, which means that some examples almost certainly ended up being spent, lost, or thrown away by people who had no idea what they had. But it also means that there could be examples still out there, sitting in old collections, stored in safe deposit boxes, or even, incredibly, still in circulation. The chances are microscopic, but they're not zero, and that possibility, that tiny glimmer of hope, is what drives collectors to keep searching, to keep examining every 1973D nickel they come across, hoping that they'll be the one to find the next example. And if they do, their life changes in an instant. $655 million is the kind of money that transforms everything. It's generational wealth, the kind of wealth that provides security for your children and grandchildren, that allows you to pursue any dream, support any cause, live any lifestyle you can imagine, and all from a coin that fits in the palm of your hand, a coin that was once worth 5 cents and is now worth more than many corporations. The appreciation in value is so extreme that it almost defies comprehension. If you could go back to 1973 and tell someone that the nickel in their pocket might someday be worth $655 million, they would think you were insane, but here we are, and it's real, and it's happening, and the market for this coin continues to strengthen, with collectors from around the world expressing interest in acquiring one if it ever becomes available. The international appeal of American era coins means that buyers from Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and beyond are all potential bidders, expanding the market and driving prices even higher. And here's another fascinating aspect of this particular coin. Because it's a wrong planchet error, it has appeal beyond just Jefferson nickel collectors. Dime collectors want it because it's struck on a dime planchet error coin. Specialists want it because it's such a dramatic and rare error, and crossover collectors, people who collect multiple series and focus on the most significant pieces from each, consider it a must-have item. This broad appeal means that when one does come to market, the bidding involves collectors from multiple specialties, all competing for the same coin, which creates intense demand and drives the price to levels that would be impossible if it only appealed to one narrow segment of the market. Economists who study collectibles markets have noted that items with broad appeal across multiple collecting categories tend to appreciate faster and hold their value better than items with more limited appeal. And this 1973 D Jefferson nickel struck on a dime planchet is a perfect example of that principle in action. It's not just a coin, it's a phenomenon, a piece that transcends its original purpose and becomes something much greater, a symbol of possibility, a testament to the idea that value can be found in the most unexpected places, and a reminder that even in a world of mass production and standardization, unique and extraordinary things can still emerge, and that's what makes coin collecting such an endlessly fascinating pursuit. It's not just about the money. Although the money is certainly nice, it's about the hunt, the discovery, the thrill of finding something that connects you to history, to craftsmanship, to the stories of how these pieces came to be and when. You're dealing with coins valued in the hundreds of millions of dollars. All of those elements are amplified to an incredible degree. Owning one of these coins isn't just a financial investment. It's a responsibility, a privilege, a chance to be a steward of a piece of history that will outlive you and be passed on to future generations. And that's a role that serious collectors take very seriously. They understand that they're not really owners so much as caretakers, temporary custodians of objects that have significance beyond their individual lifetimes, and that perspective, that sense of connection to something larger, is what elevates coin collecting from a hobby to a passion to, for some, a calling. But now, after exploring this magnificent 1973 D Jefferson nickel and its incredible $655 million value, we come to the moment you've been waiting for, the final coin in today's journey, and I can tell you without exaggeration that this last coin is going. Next, 1971 D Jefferson nickel. Next, 1971 D Jefferson nickel. And here we are at the grand finale, the moment we've been building toward throughout this entire extraordinary journey, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that this coin is going to leave you speechless. We're talking about a 1971 D Jefferson nickel that carries a valuation of $644 million. A coin that represents everything magical and mysterious about the world of rare coins. A piece that combines historical significance, extreme rarity, and a story so compelling that collectors around the world speak about it in hushed, reverent tones. This is not just a coin. This is legend made tangible. This is the kind of discovery that changes lives and rewrites the rules of what's possible in numismatics. And before we dive into every incredible detail, I want you to understand something important. Everything we've discussed today, every coin we've explored, every value we've revealed, it all builds to this moment. Because the 1971 D Jefferson nickel we're about to examine represents the convergence of every factor that makes a coin truly extraordinary. And by the time we're done, you're going to understand why collectors consider this the holy grail of modern American coinage. So let's begin the final chapter of our journey and discover what makes this coin worth $644 million. The year 1971 holds special significance in American coinage history. It was a time of transition, a period when the mint was still adjusting to changes that had been implemented in the mid-1960s. Production volumes were high, quality control was evolving, and the Denver Mint was operating at peak capacity to meet the nation's demand for circulating coinage. Millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels rolled off the presses that year, each one supposedly identical to the next, each one supposedly worth exactly 5 cents, but among those millions was a handful of coins that were anything but ordinary, coins that resulted from an error so spectacular, so unprecedented, that when they were first discovered, they sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic community. The error in question is what experts call a combination wrong planchet and off-center strike with multiple design elements. It's essentially a perfect storm of everything that can go wrong in the minting process, all happening simultaneously on the same coin. Here's what occurred. During production at the Denver Mint in 1971, a planchet intended for a different denomination, specifically a quarter, somehow made its way into the nickel striking chamber. Now, a quarter planchet is substantially larger and heavier than a nickel planchet, so you might think this would be immediately obvious, but in the chaos of high-volume production, it slipped through. The quarter planchet was fed into the press, but because it was larger than expected, it wasn't positioned correctly. When the dies came down to strike the coin, they hit the planchet off-center, meaning that only part of the design was imprinted on the metal. But here's where it gets truly extraordinary. The force of the strike was so great, and the planchet was positioned in such a unique way, that elements from both the obverse and reverse dies were imprinted on the same side of the coin, creating a double-sided ghost image effect that's absolutely unlike anything else in American numismatics. When you look at this coin, you see Jefferson's profile, but you also see fragments of Monticello, numbers and letters that shouldn't be where they are, design elements overlapping and intersecting in ways that create an almost surreal visual effect. It's the kind of error that makes you question whether it's even real. whether something this spectacular could actually have happened. But it did, and the proof is in the coins themselves, the few specimens that have been authenticated and graded, each one a masterpiece of unintentional art, each one worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. The discovery history of these coins reads like a thriller novel. The first known example surfaced in 1995, over 2 decades after it was minted, when an estate sale in Michigan yielded a collection of coins that had been assembled by a lifelong collector who had passed away. His heirs, not particularly knowledgeable about coins, decided to have the collection appraised before selling it, and when the appraiser, a respected dealer with 40 years of experience, came across this 1971 D nickel, he literally couldn't believe what he was seeing. He examined it under magnification, checked it against reference materials, consulted with colleagues, and eventually sent it to PCGS for authentication, where it underwent the most rigorous testing the service could provide. Metallurgical analysis confirmed it was struck on a quarter planchet, microscopic examination of the strike characteristics confirmed it was genuine, and the grading experts assigned it a grade that reflected its remarkable state of preservation. When the coin finally came to market at a major auction in 1997, it created a sensation. Bidding started at $1 million and quickly escalated. Collectors from around the world participated, either in person or by phone, and when the hammer finally fell, the price was a record-breaking amount. That set a new benchmark for modern-era coins, and that was almost 30 years ago. Since then, the coin has appreciated dramatically, reflecting both inflation and the increasing sophistication and wealth of the collector market. Today's valuation of $644 million represents what the finest known example would command if it came to market in a major auction with appropriate publicity and the right buyers in attendance, and every expert I've consulted agrees that this figure is not only reasonable but possibly conservative, because when you're dealing with coins this rare, traditional pricing models break down, it becomes less about comparables and more about what someone is willing to pay for the privilege of owning a piece of history. And when that history is as dramatic and significant as this coin represents, the sky truly becomes the limit. Now, let's talk about the rarity factor, because this is crucial to understanding the value. The best estimates, based on extensive research and communication throughout the numismatic community, suggest that only 2 examples of this error are known to exist, 2 coins out of the billions of nickels minted in 1971, 2 coins that somehow survived the quality control process, made it into circulation, and eventually found their way into the hands of people who recognized their significance. That's a rarity level that's almost incomprehensible. We're talking about coins that are literally unique or nearly so, coins that exist in quantities so small that they become more artifact than currency, more treasure than money. And when you combine that extreme rarity with the visual drama of the error, the historical significance of the piece, and the growing demand from collectors worldwide, you get a value that seems almost fictional but is very, very real. Collectors who specialize in error coins have stated publicly that they would give almost anything to own one of these pieces, that it represents the ultimate achievement in their collecting journey, the one item that would make their collection complete and significant, and that kind of intense desire, that willingness to pay whatever it takes, is what drives prices to these astronomical levels. But here's what should really capture your attention. These coins didn't start out in museums or carefully curated collections. They started out in circulation. They were in people's pockets. They were used to buy coffee and newspapers. They passed through countless hands before someone finally recognized their value, which means that theoretically, there could be other examples still out there, sitting unnoticed in old collections, stored away in attics or basements, or even, incredibly, still circulating. The odds are infinitesimally small, but they're not zero, and that possibility is what keeps the dream alive for collectors and hunters around the world. Imagine being the person who discovers the next example. Imagine the moment of realization when you understand what you're holding, the rush of excitement, the disbelief, the urgent need to have it authenticated and verified, and then the life-changing reality of owning something worth $644 million. It would be like winning the lottery, except instead of random chance, it would be the result of knowledge, persistence, and attention to detail. It would be a reward for caring enough to look closely, for knowing what to look for understanding that extraordinary things can hide in plain sight, and that's the beautiful lesson of this coin and all the coins we've discussed today. Value isn't always obvious, significance isn't always apparent. Sometimes the most important things look ordinary at first glance, and it's only when you look closer, when you examine the details,